It was supposed to be just another haunted house film. But what unfolded behind the scenes of Poltergeist, 1982, felt more cursed than scripted. When actors start dying mysteriously, props turn out to be real human remains, and even the crew whisper about unexplainable events. You're no longer making horror, you're living it. Directed, supposedly by Tobe Hooper, and produced by Steven Spielberg, Poltergeist became a pop culture landmark of supernatural cinema. But the movie's legacy has always been shadowed by something darker, a chilling string of deaths, bizarre production choices, and an eerie atmosphere that bled from fiction into real life. Was it all coincidence, or was something truly watching them from the other side? These are 20 weird facts you didn't know about Poltergeist, 1982, a film that might have conjured more than just scares on screen. Fact number 1. The skeletons were real. The scene in which JoBeth Williams falls into a muddy pool filled with skeletons was already terrifying on screen. What she didn't know while filming it, those weren't plastic props. They were actual human remains. The production team sourced real skeletons from a medical supply company because they were, believe it or not, cheaper than making realistic replicas at the time. Williams wasn't told until after shooting the scene. She had spent hours submerged in muddy water, thrashing around dead bodies that once had names, histories, families, and she wasn't the only one. Several other scenes in the film also used authentic human bones, including the iconic moment when the coffins erupt from the ground. The decision sparked outrage later, especially after the deaths of several cast members gave rise to the infamous Poltergeist Curse. Was it a budget shortcut, or a spiritual offense that awakened something far worse? Would the film have been just another haunted house story if they hadn't used real bones? Or did those skeletons bring more than atmosphere to the set? Fact 2. Dominique Dunne's tragic end. She played Dana, the teenage daughter in Poltergeist, but Dominique Dunne's life ended just months after the film premiered. In October 1982, Dunne was strangled in the driveway of her Los Angeles home by her ex-boyfriend, an incident so brutal it stunned the nation. She never regained consciousness and died days later. She was just 22. The timing of her death, so soon after Poltergeist's release, fed directly into the idea of a curse. A young, rising star cut down by senseless violence, mirroring the kind of abrupt, chaotic horror the film itself tried to depict. But the public outrage didn't stop with her death. Her killer received a sentence of only 6 years and served just over 3. The question lingers, was Dunne simply a tragic victim of domestic abuse, or the first sacrifice claimed by something darker that lingered around the film? And if so, who or what was keeping score? Fact number 3. Who really directed Poltergeist? Officially, Poltergeist was directed by Tobe Hooper, but if you ask anyone on set grips, gaffers, even cast members, they'll tell you Spielberg was in charge. Steven Spielberg, already a powerhouse after E.T. and Raiders of the Lost Ark, was contractually prohibited from directing another film while E.T. was still in production. So he brought in Hooper, best known for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, as a director on paper. But behind the scenes, Spielberg allegedly called the shots, choreographed scenes, and gave direct orders. Actress Zelda Rubinstein once said Spielberg was on set every day. Tobe wasn't. Others described Hooper as more of a consultant than a true director. Even Spielberg himself, in a 1,982-liter A-Times interview, said, "I think a producer is almost like a director. I tried to stay in the background, but I found myself more involved than usual." So who really authored Poltergeist's haunting tone? Hooper's grit or Spielberg's polish? Or was the film's dual vision, half raw chaos, half Hollywood shine, the very thing that made it feel so otherworldly? Fact number 4. The clown doll almost killed someone. You probably remember the clown doll, the one that wraps its arms around the young boy and drags him under the bed. It's pure nightmare fuel. But few know the scene wasn't acting. Actor Oliver Robbins, who played the son, was actually being choked by the prop. During one take, the animatronic arms malfunctioned and tightened around his neck. He struggled, turned red, and couldn't breathe. Everyone thought he was just giving a great performance until he began to pass out. It took several seconds before the crew realized he was suffocating. Spielberg reportedly had to step in personally and yank the doll off the boy. The moment was never included in the final cut. But knowing what happened behind that innocent-looking toy makes the scene exponentially darker. What if they hadn't noticed in time? Would Poltergeist have become the first film to show a child actor dying on camera by the very horror it created? When the line between fiction and danger gets blurred, is the curse just a metaphor or a warning? Fact number 5. Heather O'Rourke's final words. She was the face of the franchise, the wide-eyed little girl who whispered, "They're here." But Heather O'Rourke wouldn't live to see the final film's release. At just 12 years old, she died suddenly from cardiac arrest due to septic shock, the result of a misdiagnosed intestinal blockage. The symptoms were subtle at first, flu-like signs the doctors dismissed. By the time anyone realized what was happening, it was too late. Her last lines in Poltergeist III had to be re-recorded by a voice actress. Her final filmed scenes take on a chilling, unintended meaning, as if the franchise itself was already burying its star. Some claimed it was random medical tragedy. Others pointed out she had been healthy just days before. Could a scriptwriter have crafted a more symbolically cruel ending for the one character who represented innocence amid the chaos? Or did something truly want her gone before the story could be finished? Fact number 6. The lightning that hit twice. During the filming of Poltergeist, crew members reported freak electrical malfunctions, lights flickering, camera gear shorting out, even sudden power losses on cloudless days. But the eeriest event came not on set, but during post-production. Sound editor Richard L. Anderson told of an incident where, while mixing a particularly intense seance scene, lightning struck the editing building. Once, it wouldn't be notable, but it struck again. Within minutes, same place, same storm, same moment in the audio reel. 2 bolts, back to back, hitting the same spot while working on a scene involving spirits trying to cross over. Insurance called it rare but explainable. The sound team called it something else entirely. The tapes weren't damaged, but the mood in the room shifted. From then on, no one stayed alone in the sound studio after dark. Can coincidence explain everything when lightning insists on coming back for more? Fact number 7. The curse reached beyond the trilogy. Most people assume the Poltergeist curse only affected the original cast, but the dark cloud didn't stop there. In Poltergeist II, actor Julian Beck, who played the terrifying Reverend Kane, was battling stomach cancer throughout filming. His ghostly appearance wasn't makeup. He died shortly after production ended. Then came Will Sampson, the Native American actor who performed a real exorcism on the set. He passed away less than a year later due to post-surgical complications, despite being in stable condition. In Poltergeist III, Heather O'Rourke collapsed and died during reshoots. The studio was forced to complete the movie using stand-ins and voice dubbing. These weren't elderly actors at the end of their careers. They were working professionals who died unexpectedly during or shortly after their involvement. Patterns emerge. But what do we call them? Coincidences? Or a whisper from something that didn't want its story told 3 times? How many tragedies must surround a franchise before we stop calling them accidents and start wondering what kind of energy the cameras captured? Fact number 8. The static wasn't just a visual gimmick. The image of Carol Ann pressing her hands to a screen of television static became instantly iconic. But why static? And why did it feel so hypnotic? In the early 1982nd, before cable and streaming, static was common on analog TVs, especially late at night. Spielberg reportedly chose it because it felt alive, like a portal waiting for something to push through. But there's more. Scientists have noted that the random white noise of analog static contains cosmic microwave background radiation, literal echoes of the Big Bang, meaning every time we see that fuzzy screen, we're technically watching remnants of the universe's creation. That symbolism wasn't lost on the filmmakers. The spirits in Poltergeist weren't just ghosts. They were entities slipping through a cosmic crack in reality, using television as their window. And we welcomed them in with our eyes wide open. Did Poltergeist predict the future of media as a spiritual medium? Or was it warning us about what happens when we stare too long into the void? Fact number 9. JoBeth Williams refused to film at home. JoBeth Williams, who played the mother in Poltergeist, noticed something strange while filming. After returning home each night, picture frames in her house were crooked again and again. She'd fix them. The next morning, they'd be tilted always the same ones, always the same angle. There were no earthquakes, no kids playing tricks, just an uneasy rhythm she couldn't explain. It disturbed her enough that she asked not to take props or wardrobe items home from set. She even began staying at a hotel during key shooting days, citing bad energy at home. Crew members brushed it off, but Williams said she felt watched during filming, as if something followed her back each night. No one else on the crew reported anything similar, but then again, no one else spent that much time screaming in a house built over a cemetery. Was it paranoia? Or proof that the line between character and reality was beginning to blur? Fact number 10. Tangina's voice was dubbed without her knowing. Zelda Rubinstein's performance as Tangina, the eccentric medium, was unforgettable. Her whispered warnings and eerie calmness became a hallmark of the film. but not all of that was her. For key sequences, her voice was silently dubbed in post-production without her consent. Sound editors deepened her tone to make her words feel more ominous. The justification? Spielberg reportedly wanted her to sound less earthly. Rubinstein didn't find out until she saw the final cut. She was furious. The voice was still hers, technically, but distorted beyond recognition in several scenes. Years later, she would comment on it in interviews, calling it a betrayal of the authenticity she tried to bring to the role. Ironically, her most iconic line, "This house is clean," was left untouched. So the question becomes, if the message was powerful, does it matter who's really speaking? Or was her silenced voice just another casualty of a film obsessed with control on screen and off? Fact number 11. The Beast was created from nightmare sketches. The demonic entity known as the Beast that emerges in the film wasn't just a visual effect. Its final design came from an unusual source, nightmares. Concept artist H.R. Giger, famous for Alien, was originally approached but declined. So Spielberg and the effects team turned inward, asking cast and crew to describe their worst childhood nightmares. From those descriptions, a horrifying hybrid was born. Part skeletal bird, part rotting dog, with eyes that didn't blink. It was sculpted using clay, latex, and raw chicken parts for texture. During one test shoot, the animatronic beast malfunctioned and lunged off its track, crashing into a wall and terrifying the crew. They scrapped that version and simplified the design. But what made it into the film wasn't any less disturbing, because it didn't come from imagination, it came from memory. What does it say about us that our most terrifying villain isn't some invented monster, but a mosaic of shared childhood trauma? Fact number 12. The house was real and it's still standing. The Freeling family home may have been consumed by supernatural chaos, but in reality, it's still there, quiet, suburban, eerily normal. Located in Simi Valley, California, the actual house used for exterior shots still stands, largely untouched since filming. No remodeling, no dramatic paint job, no tourist trap sign out front. But ask the neighbors, and you'll hear odd stories. Lights flickering during storms, dogs howling at nothing, delivery drivers refusing to go near the front porch at night. There's no confirmed paranormal activity, but there's also a strange reverence, like people know better than to test whatever may or may not be lingering. The current owners have kept a low profile. Some say they don't even tell visitors it's that house. When fiction becomes legend, is it the location that haunts us or the memory of what we watched happen there? Fact number 13. The graveyard was real, kind of. In one of the most disturbing sequences in Poltergeist, coffins erupt from the ground, sending decayed bodies flying. It's a metaphor for building over the past, literally. But the metaphor wasn't entirely fictional. The suburban development in the film was inspired by real California housing projects constructed over reinterred cemeteries. In some cases, entire burial grounds were relocated hastily, often leaving behind bones, artifacts, and some claim unsettled energy. The writers didn't need to invent the idea, they borrowed it. Rumors of malfunctioning plumbing, cracking foundations, and strange dreams plagued certain real neighborhoods in the San Fernando Valley, close to where Poltergeist was filmed. Spielberg and co-writer Michael Grace never publicly confirmed the inspiration, but insiders have hinted it was closer to home than anyone thought. So when Craig T. Nelson screams, "You moved the headstones, but not the bodies," was that just a line or a confession? How much of Poltergeist was fiction, and how much was a cinematic mirror to real-life desecration? Fact number 14. The mirror trick that terrified the crew. There's a scene where a character looks into a mirror and his face begins to peel off, revealing bone, muscle, and nothingness. It's horrifying, and it didn't go according to plan. The scene was created using a fake head and prosthetic hands operated by special effects technician Craig Reardon. But during the first rehearsal, something else happened. As the actor stood in front of the mirror, lights flickered. Then the mirrored glass, brand new, clean, suddenly cracked down the center. Everyone froze. No one was touching it. There was no rig, no vibration, no trick glass. Just a jagged line appearing as if something unseen wanted out. They never used that mirror again. The crew replaced it and resumed filming. But Reardon kept a piece of the shattered glass. When asked why, he simply said, "I don't think it wanted to be filmed." In a film about spirits using television screens to reach the living, maybe the mirrors were just the backup plan. Fact number 15. The Poltergeist poster was censored overseas. That haunting original poster, little Carol Ann kneeling in front of a blinding screen, was too much for some countries. In parts of Europe and Asia, censors banned the image outright, calling it disturbing and spiritually provocative. In Japan, some theaters required alternate versions where the television glow was dimmed and the child's figure was cropped. Why? Because traditional beliefs in many cultures associate glowing screens, especially at night, with portals for the dead. One distributor in Malaysia even claimed the image invited attention from the wrong realm. Studios pushed back, but in the end, local governments had final say. The bans didn't hurt the film's box office, but they added to the film's mystique. It's rare for a single image to be so powerful it needs to be legally silenced. But that's what Poltergeist tapped into, something deeper than fear. What other Hollywood horror film can say its marketing was considered spiritually dangerous? Fact number 16. Spielberg's contract may have been a lie. On paper, Steven Spielberg couldn't direct Poltergeist. His contract with Universal for E.T. prohibited him from helming another film at the same time. So, officially, Tobe Hooper directed it, but legal documents only say so much. Crew members described Spielberg's involvement as total. He storyboarded scenes, blocked shots, even directed actors. Hooper was reportedly sidelined on key decisions. Some insiders called him a ghost director, a fitting title for a film haunted on and off screen. Years later, Spielberg admitted he was too hands-on, but denied crossing legal lines. Still, the Directors Guild of America launched a quiet investigation, though no action was taken. Some claim the ambiguity was intentional. Spielberg wanted to direct but couldn't, so the production danced in the gray space between authorship and loophole. It begs the question, was Poltergeist really a story about invisible forces, or a reflection of the invisible control behind the camera? Fact number 17. A real-life medium was hired then disappeared. Before casting Zelda Rubinstein as Tangina, the studio briefly hired a real psychic consultant to advise on the script. She asked not to be named in the credit. She worked for 2 weeks, advising on spiritual language, rituals, and the behavior of restless energies. Her input shaped several scenes, especially the climactic light tunnel and spirit cleanse. Then she vanished. No goodbye, no notice. Just didn't return. When contacted, her assistant said she had become too disturbed by what was being summoned. According to rumor, she warned the producers, "You're not just making a movie, you're knocking on a door." Spielberg reportedly brushed it off, but crew members said her departure cast a shadow. One grip refused to return for night shoots after that week. Her notes were kept. Her name? Still unknown. Was she a dramatist looking for attention, or did she see something in the script that the rest of us couldn't? Fact number 18. The original ending was much darker. In the final version of Poltergeist, the family escapes their haunted home, and the house implodes in a flash of light. It's cathartic, clean, even a little hopeful. But that wasn't the original ending. Early drafts had something far more sinister. In one version, the house doesn't collapse. Instead, Carol Ann is never found. The parents flee without her, only to later realize she's been absorbed into the light permanently. Spielberg reportedly called the ending too cruel and ordered rewrites. But some insiders believe it was changed not out of compassion, but fear that a film ending in loss would attract negative energy. Heather O'Rourke's later death gave the alternate ending an eerie retrospective weight. Did the filmmakers dodge a curse by softening the story, or did they invite it by pretending everything was fine? Fact number 19. The static scene was shot in total darkness. The iconic moment where Carol Ann places her hands on the glowing television screen was shot in a completely dark studio. Not dim, pitch black. To capture the eerie glow properly, cinematographer Matthew F. Leonetti insisted on total light control. The only illumination came from the static itself, broadcast on a loop from analog VHS to simulate the effect. Heather O'Rourke, just 6 years old, stood silently in the dark, surrounded by black curtains, a crew that whispered instead of shouted, and a screen buzzing with cosmic snow. She performed the scene perfectly still, focused, unnervingly calm. Spielberg called it the most spiritual moment of the shoot. But the crew reported something stranger. Equipment batteries drained faster than usual, cameras glitched during takes, and in one case, the playback monitor displayed static, even when it was turned off. Did the dark amplify the mood or allow something else into the room? Fact number 20. The real Poltergeist was never named. Despite its title, Poltergeist never actually names the entity haunting the Freeling family. There's no clear villain, no demon, no ghost with a backstory. Unlike other horror films that obsess over origins, Poltergeist gives us fragments, a burial ground, a bright light, a child's voice, but no true explanation. This wasn't an accident. Spielberg wanted the threat to remain abstract, something felt, not defined. The fear wasn't in the ghost's name, it was in its silence. The result? A film where the danger feels omnipresent, but never specific. A force that can't be reasoned with because it doesn't explain itself. Many fans have created theories, ancient spirits, government experiments, interdimensional beings, but the film offers no answers, just echoes. Maybe that's the real curse. Not what we know, but what we'll never be allowed to understand. Bonus fact. The first death was the screenwriter's dog. Before production began, screenwriter Michael Grace experienced something odd. His dog, healthy, young, energetic, suddenly refused to enter his home office. It would growl at nothing, whine, and scratch at the door. One night, after days of this, the dog collapsed and died. The vet couldn't find a cause. Grace had just finished the first full draft of Poltergeist. He didn't mention the incident to Spielberg, but in later interviews, he called it the first death connected to the film. No one ever investigated it further. No one else seemed to care. But Grace kept the dog's collar on his desk during rewrites. Maybe it was just grief, or maybe the story was already taking something in return. After all, who said the curse only begins when the cameras roll? Which of these strange truths disturbed you the most? Was it the real skeletons, the deaths, or the silence behind the screen? Tell us in the comments which fact you think proves the curse is real, and let us know which haunted film we should uncover next. Like, subscribe, and remember, some stories don't end when the credits roll.